I want to preface this by saying I think Georgia is the better team, and I think Georgia's going to win this game against Alabama in the SEC championship game. But what Georgia cannot do is what it did against Georgia Tech and what it did against Auburn, and that's just allow teams to just run all over you. And both of them put up 200 yards rushing against Georgia. Combine that with a couple turnovers, and Georgia's only beating Georgia Tech by 8 points. Georgia's got to have a game-winning touchdown against Auburn in the fourth quarter. Has to go down the field. They end up winning by 7 points, right? So kind of the same story as in terms of how competitive the game was when it comes to Georgia Tech and Auburn. And those are just, the two obvious examples there with teams running all over Georgia and also causing turnovers. Those things will really hurt Georgia, and it'll hurt Georgia even more against an Alabama team. Runs the ball pretty well, and can control the time clock with Jalen Milroe and Jace McClellan and those guys back there running the football. Georgia can't do that against Alabama because at the end of the day, it is a better program. It's a better team. It's a better coach team than Georgia Tech and Auburn. They've got more talent everywhere, and they've got Nick Saban on the other side of the football making adjustments and everything. Now, is this Georgia Tech game just is what it is and you just got to throw it in the garbage? I kind of lean towards that. I don't have any overreactions from this Georgia Tech game, really. I mean, first of all, I don't think Georgia's offense was really that big of a problem. I think that the game plan was obviously to pound the rock and get out of there. I think it was pretty clear what Mike Bobo and this offense was trying to do. Just trying to bully Georgia Tech on the line of scrimmage and run the ball all over them. And guess what? They did that. 262 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns is doing that. That is definitely above average. But it also happened to Georgia. And do you take too many overreactions just because they didn't play a lot of guys? And are they looking ahead to this game that we're talking about now? It's cold, it's weird, it's game, it's night. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I don't overreact from games like these as much. And what have we seen? We've seen Georgia play low down to the competition. Next week, against Alabama in the SEC championship game, this game is dramatic. This game is legendary. This game is consequential. This is what it's been, 2012, 2018, 2021. Think about the last 3 and what they were like. Well, 2012 and 2018, both very dramatic and very consequential. 2021 ended up not being super consequential because they end up rematching in the national championship game. And you know what happened? Georgia won that. Is this the real changing of the guard in this game? Is this kind of putting the beast to bed in Alabama? Are they putting them to sleep on Saturday? Can Georgia kind of slay the giant for good and really just complete the changing of the tides in college football? It would be a fitting way to end this run in the SEC as we've known it for the last however many years, 10, 15, 20, whatever, that the SEC has been structured this way. And obviously, Missouri, the additions of Missouri and Texas A&M there. This is kind of the end. This is kind of the end of it. No more divisions after this. We won't look at it like, Georgia's going to dominate the East this year. Alabama's a lock for the West this year. It won't be that anymore because Texas and Oklahoma are coming over the league, and really good teams are going to be playing each other all the time. You're going to get weeks where LSU's playing Oklahoma and Texas is playing Georgia and Tennessee's playing Oklahoma. It's going to be every week where there's just bigger games, and it's going to be a different league. Georgia can end this run of the league by slaying Alabama. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. I got 4 minutes into this before I told you to sign up for our newsletter, and it's down below. I'm linking it, and as Matt would say, you could be a 5-star Georgia fan by signing up for this newsletter. You want to know a fun fact? This video, it is 5 in the morning. All right, I just got home a little bit ago from this Georgia Tech game. These night games are tough on us, guys. You could probably hear it on my voice, but these night games can be really tough on us. That's why I don't always get super excited when I see that late kick, especially when it's over and over again during the season. This one in particular, come on, like we could have just had it at noon. We could have just had this one at noon. Back to football, Georgia. Jalen Milroe is a real weapon, and what we saw tonight with Haynes King, what we've seen with Peyton Thorne, what we've seen with Spencer Rattler, what we've seen with Brady Cook is this Georgia defense is vulnerable to quarterbacks making plays. Now, I named 4 different guys there that made plays in different ways. So let's go back to the Peyton Thorne and Haynes King part of it, because I think that's a little bit closer to home when we're talking about this Alabama team with Jalen Milroe. Stretch runs, read option runs, counter runs, they're working against Georgia. And guess who? Here's the thing about Jalen Milroe. Some of his production comes from scrambling. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to do it. Georgia's going to have to also defend that. But the design runs with him are going to be a problem as well, because guess what? Jalen Milroe, more electric than Haynes King, more electric than Peyton Thorne, who ran for a 60-yard run against Georgia, more electric than Spencer Rattler, Brady Cook, all of these, Jackson Dart. Jalen Milroe can make more plays with his legs than those guys can. He's going to be hard to stop. Smile London tonight, C.J. Allen tonight, I think they combined for about 17 total tackles-ish. Smile London had 5 in the first quarter. Those guys are going to have to... There's going to be a responsibility with those guys having a spy on Jalen Milroe. Here's the thing about he has so much time to throw. And something, obviously, I'm thinking about the Hail Mary that he had to Isaiah Bond to end the Iron Bowl the way that it did. I think about that play and how much time he had. Really don't think he's going to have that much time against Georgia. He's going to have to make quicker decisions against Georgia than he has had against some of these other teams. What has Alabama done against some good defenses this year? Auburn doesn't have a great defense, and they scored 33, pick 6. In the end, so they really put up 20-something offensive points. They only put up 20-something against Texas A&M. Put up 20-something against a solid defense in Texas. Alabama hasn't been explosive against these really, really good defenses. Is Georgia an elite Does Georgia have an elite defense? No, but Georgia has a really good defense, and it's going to have to stop this run game. Because here's, look, let's be real. Jalen Milroe, Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond, whoever it is, Georgia's going to get beat in the passing game a couple of times. Are they going to consistently get beat in the passing game by someone who is not an elite quarterback? And Jalen Milroe might be an elite playmaker. Calling him an elite quarterback is a far stretch of the word. How many elite quarterbacks are there even in college football? Maybe a couple, right? And is Carson Beck one of them? Maybe. He's trying to become that. He's a really, really good quarterback. Didn't have a fantastic day against Georgia Tech with his 175 on 50-something% completion percentage. Not great. 13 for 20, something like that. So low 60s. I can't do the math on that. Whatever. Get out of here. 13 for 65%. I just did the math. I actually did the math. Containing Jalen Milroe would be a lot harder. I realized that I just lost my train of thought there, and when I made that joke about the math. But at the end of the day, what I was discussing was the passing game. Alabama, I don't think, is going to just torch Georgia through the air. So what's it going to try to do? It's going to try to get the ball into its backs, into McClellan's hands, into whoever they decide. He's their lead back, obviously. They're going to do design runs. Containing the edge, Georgia's not done a very good job at containing the edge. And whoever's responsibility that may be with Marvin Jones Jr., Chaz Chambliss, those defensive ends, Jalen Walker, Smile London some of these times when he's kind of playing an outside line. He's playing a pass rusher role. He's near the tackles. Containing Milroe is going to be key. Because if you contain that guy, you keep him in the pocket and give him a little bit of pressure, I'll tell you right now, Alabama's going to have a really, really hard time against the Dogs and this Dogs defense. And I think Georgia will play better against Alabama than it did against Georgia Tech. I think that if it played like it did against Georgia Tech, it might not win. But if Alabama plays like it did against Auburn, it might not win as well. That's kind of the catch-22 here, is neither team played well on rivalry weekends, or at least well to the point where where it was just domination heading into the SEC Championship. Both of them kind of have a letdown of a day where you're favored by double digits over your rival. You're definitely much better. Both on the road, too. And you go into these environments, and it ends up being tougher. And hats off to the Georgia Tech crowd. This was the toughest Georgia Tech environment that I've seen. I know that I probably haven't been to many Georgia Tech games where there should have been a crazy environment. But yeah, they showed up. The night game definitely helps with that. And I don't think the things that happened in the previous games, like Georgia Tech and Auburn, are going to happen against Alabama because I think this team knows what's ahead, and it's the best team in the country. This Georgia team is. I feel really good about saying that. I saw Joel Klatt. I've seen some experts have Michigan as number one now that they have this top 3 win over Ohio State. Don't overreact to that, experts. Don't overreact to that. And don't overreact to what you saw on rivalry weekend as far as just total, best teams in the country and everything. I think you got to look at it in full. And looking at this Georgia game in full, it won't just be about stopping the run for Georgia. Georgia will also have to do things offensively. But containing Jalen Murrow, keeping that guy in the pocket, and that combined with pressure, he'll have a really tough day against the Georgia defense. And if Georgia scoring the ball and doing that, we're talking about Georgia blowing out Alabama. That's what we're talking about happening. And it could be the other way around. I'm not saying that Alabama can't go into Atlanta and thump Georgia, but containing that guy and containing the playmaking, I think gives Georgia a really, really good chance to win. Those are my thoughts. Those are my 5 a.m. thoughts. I'm sorry they weren't super coherent, but Georgia cannot let Alabama run all over them because it will change the game.